Welcome, everyone. We'll get started here in just a quick moment. Guys, if you've got anybody that's having issues with logging on, any colleagues that have issues with logging on, just send them to the website, shoptalk.info. There's a link up at the top left-hand corner for today's meeting that they should be able to go right into. Got a couple of folks that have told me they've got issues with the link, but that will always be there. So, all right, guys. While we get everything situated with that, let me go ahead and get started with a couple of things today. Again, today's June 14th. This is our Shop Talk for the month of June. Our next one will be July 12th. So be on the lookout for an invite on that. Well, first of all, I want to go ahead and move everything over to our update from NMHC. Dave, can you check your audio really quick? I'm not sure if your audio's, you may just have to click your mute button up at the top of the screen. While Dave's doing that, I want to go ahead and remind everybody about one thing that's opening today, which is the registration for the NMHC Student Housing Conference. That opens today, and you can actually, I'll go ahead and push out an offer to you guys. It shows up as an offer. It's just a link to the registration page if you want to do that. That is going to be September 28th through the 30th down in Miami. So if you're planning on going to that, today is the first day that registration opens up. All right. Dave, do we have you on?
You do.
Perfect. With that being said, I will go ahead and hand things over to you.
So I appreciate that and appreciate everybody being on today. And thank you for the shout out for NMHC's conference registration. Gosh, I already think about something that's that many months out, but it does open today. So we're excited about that. And it is in Miami Beach. So if you'll like to have a good time in addition to a good conference, you should definitely make plans to come on down. We've already got a lineup of some great keynote speakers I think you guys will all enjoy, in addition to the great networking and great food that is down in South Beach. So with that in mind, wanted to stay on track, give you kind of a little bit of an update from what's happening here in Washington, D.C. Some of the things I'm going to cover don't directly impact student housing, but I think they're always important to cover because sometimes they have an indirect impact as well. So recently the White House announced a housing supply action plan, which does have an overall impact on affordable housing with a focus in a number of different areas. You know, there are some things there that when the White House announces things doesn't necessarily mean it translates directly into housing. So we'll wait and see. It's something that we have worked diligently with the administration on, always talking about what are the things that impact the industry and why we have a shortage on housing. And with that in mind, I'm going to talk about the next thing that got rolled out this week, which is a cost of regulation report. This is a report that we jointly did with the National Association of Home Builders 4 years ago. And this is an update, and this is actually really critical and has gotten great press when we did this 4 years ago. A lot of members on the Hill recognize and the issues regarding regulations, and certainly the student housing industry is subject to that as well. Just to leave you with a number off of that report, the report that we put out said 40.6% of the delivered cost of a unit, whether it's a unit behind a door for student housing or an apartment unit, 40.6% of those costs come directly from regulation. So certainly a big number, and one that gets a lot of good airplay with those who are policymakers and certainly pay attention to that report. Along the same lines, again, focusing on housing, you know, FHFA, which is a regulator for Fannie and Freddie, historically have been great providers of capital for the student housing industry, a little less so in the prior years, simply because of the caps that have been put on and some of the affordability metrics that the enterprises are required to chase. Along those same lines, they asked the enterprises to put together equitable housing finance plans. Really kind of two different plans very quickly. You know, Freddie Mac has a lot of multifamily focused aspects in theirs, and Fannie Mae's is very focused on home ownership. So my only point here for the student housing industry that it, again, may divert a little bit attention away from some of the capital needs for the industry. Community and Reinvestment Act is a bank related regulation that requires them to serve low and moderate income neighborhoods. And some of the universities that are part of student housing actually exist in those neighborhoods. Now, whether it can be construed that by doing loans or servicing within that community can serve and qualify for CRA Act goals, we don't know the answer to that, but this is something that's a far-reaching regulation and will impact how banks treat some of their loans, and so it could have an ancillary impact that could be positive for the student housing industry. There are quite a number of other things that are floating around as well. More difficult to get legislation done through the end of what I call the fiscal year, which will take us up to the election. And as seen here, a lot of what I just described is regulatory. So keeping our pulse on a lot of regulatory action here in Washington, and obviously Matthew and I keep a fine-tuned ear towards anything that could negatively impact the student housing industry. And with that, Wes, I'm going to turn the floor back to you.
Well, great. I appreciate it. Also put out a poll to everybody if I'd like to get a kind of a quick read on who may be going to NMHC or who's still thinking about it. So if you will, vote on that. We've got Quay from NAA that is supposed to be on next. And I am not finding where she has requested to speak. Quay, I found you. Give me just a second here. We'll bring you on board. And Matt, I see you on here. I don't know why it wouldn't allow you to come in, but I think Dave covered everything. Dave, unless if you want me to bring Matthew on for something.
I think we're good at this point, Wes. Don't want to hold the program up anymore. So I think we're good on our end.
Fantastic. Well, I will. I'm sure we'll be talking soon about scheduling a time to get on the podcast and talk about what's on tap for the conference. So looking forward to that, and we'll talk to you soon. But certainly by July 12th when we have our next Shop Talk. Thanks so much, Dave.
Perfect. Thanks, Wes.
Quay, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you? Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's a little light, but I can hear you just fine.
Okay, let's see.
Might just need to get a little bit closer to the microphone or something along those lines.
Okay, how about now?
Yeah, it's getting better.
Okay.
So I'm going to go ahead and bring your slide up. If you want to go through this, or I can go through it either way, but I'm going to go ahead and bring that up for you.
Okay. Yes, I see it now.
All right, perfect.
All right, we're good.
Yeah, so, just to kind of set everything up for everybody, Jen Cassidy, one of our leadership committee members, we were talking about, hey, what are all the operators kind of thinking about this month, and is there anything important that that they felt like we needed to discuss? And Jen Cassidy rose her hand and said, we're actually going through the process at Cardinal Management Group of switching over to the NAA form lease agreement that it had been updated a few years ago as it related to student housing, because NAA's always had a great form lease, and there's a lot of things built into it. All the judges know it really well. If there ends up being an eviction or something like that a landlord has to take care of. But we had this thing in student housing with lease by the bed that was not always, it didn't match up well with the NAA form lease, but you guys have done some things to fix that. And Jen felt like it was something that operators certainly needed to listen to and consider as possibly something that they may want to set up for even next leasing season. So with that being said, I'll hand it over to you, and you can go through some of the advantages with the NAA form lease.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much for having me. I am happy to be here. Again, my name is Kwei Nwagu. I am a senior sales manager at NAA, and I'm just happy to be here to talk about Click and Lease, give you an overview, and talk about also the changes that we have made to the student housing lease. And yes, we did bring on board Cardinal Group, so it's been a pleasure working with the team, and looking forward to increasing our membership here. So what is NAA Click and Lease? NAA Click and Lease is a web-based software that provides compliance leasing forms. Click and Lease is trusted by professionals nationwide, and all members of our management company will benefit from using the program. I can definitely attest to the leasing managers, right? Because I worked at a property before, and we use this program. I was able to, conduct my tours, engage with my residents. And when it came to the time to generate and execute my leases, it was a simple and streamlined way. I was able to select the forms that I needed, send them to my residents or my prospect to sign and execute the leases. For your legal professionals, they want everyone to be legally protected. You want to protect your assets. And Click and Lease ensure that, because we review our forms annually and anytime there's a change in law. As well as your executives, they want consistency across the board, right? So if you have properties in different regions, different states, we provide that consistency across the board. So you'll be able to generate and execute your leases, your regional managers, your on-site teams. If they're moving from property to property, the program is the same across the board. And please stop me if you have any questions, or put them in the chat if there's anything that I can answer along the way. So Click and Lease features, and we are powered by Blue Moon. Blue Moon is our technology platform. Again, like I mentioned, it is a web-based software. So it is a lot of management company initiatives to go online and paperless, and Click and Lease provides you that. We integrate with all property management software. So if you're using Yardi, RealPage, Entrata, AppFolio, any of those PMS providers, we will be willing to integrate with them. So it provides you that capability to conduct all your leasing operations all under one. You will also have access to rental application. That is also accounting for the, any laws in that specific area when it comes to student housing and so forth. You'll be able to customize that leasing rental application. You're able to also customize your lease packet. You can, NAA has thought about all the different forms that would be needed at your student property, right? So from all of your addendum, we have created that. But if there's anything that is specific to your property, your student housing property, we would be able to work with you. Blue Moon Custom Department will work with you to add that form so that it is available in your library when you go to select your default lease. We also have a setting where you can lock down fields in case there is any changes, any fields that you do not want your on-site teams to change. You can lock those fields down. So again, it is, you're minimizing your risk. Again, going back to that, mitigation, minimizing your risk. NAA Click and Lease by the numbers. We are available in 50 states. So again, going back to that consistency, if you have properties in different states, we will be willing to work with you and provide you those forms for all your properties. We have over 7 million units now participating in the programs. I'm happy to say that. And we have 3,000 plus management companies. Of course, they range from your large management companies to mid-size and your small independent rental owners who may just have one single student housing rental. So, I say this because we are the industry standard. You can definitely see that there's a lot of management company that trust this program. Our litigation defender insurance. This was added because NAA wants to give you that peace of mind. This is another way we say that we stand by our lease. So should anyone challenges the NAA language, NAA litigation defender insurance will kick in and cover you. We do not want you to incur any additional expenses for choosing to use NAA student housing lease. There is no additional cost to that. So it is automatically provided to you when you sign up for Click and Lease student housing housing. Also, it is a $1 million policy per claim. So again, we're just, giving you that peace of mind to ensure that we are meeting those state, local, and federal jurisdictions laws to ensure that your properties are legally protected when it comes to compliant leasing forms. So our benefits, of course, I will highlight, it is mainly for the legally compliant forms that we have now 7 million units participating in the program. So we provide that comprehensive up-to-date forms. We are compatible with our PMS providers. So if you are using any of those, large or mid-size, Blue Moon, our technology platform, will work with them to integrate your account. We're reducing your risk against, changing state laws when it comes to click and lease, when it comes to different state and jurisdictions. I talked about the customizable lease package. You're able to add your own custom forms that may be specific to your management company procedure. I recently worked with a management company that had their community policies that were different from what NAA was providing. And they were able to work with Blue Moon and add that to their platform. So, it's good to have that flexibility. And then you'll have access to all of the online leasing forms that we provide, all the resources, webinars, and trainings that will be available to your on-site teams. Now we're in legal compliance.
There we go.
So the most important thing, of course, right, for student housing lease. And so, we do have 60+ forms. So again, very comprehensive lease packet, from your animal addendum, parking addendum, all of the forms that you think you may need for your student housing property. NAA has definitely created those. But again, as I mentioned, if there's anything specific to your property or your management company procedures, you can definitely add that as custom form. We do have a special provision section in each of our forms that, allows you to also add any additional language. So we may have the form, let's say, for example, our parking garage addendum. Maybe you provide a valet. There's no language for that, so maybe you can add that as in the special provision section. In terms of custom forms, I typically tell the management companies I work with, it should be a form that is completely different, right? That NAA doesn't provide. So, for example, a tanning bed. We don't have a tanning bed addendum. Well, you can add that as a custom form. So you'll just work directly with Blue Moon, and they will add that to your platform. So when you go to select your forms for your lease packet, you'll be able to have that, include that. We have many jurisdiction-specific forms, so there are many states where you will find when you view our lease packet, you'll see that they're very specific to, county or certain areas, depending on that law. So we try to go down, especially to even jurisdiction-specific forms. We do have an annual legal review of all of our states. So all the 50 states will get an annual review. That is the minimum. But of course, you have those states that have constant changes, right? So like California, Florida, New York, Massachusetts, there are many states that have constant changes. And those states, we do constant reviews. And we work with our attorneys to make sure that our forms, any changes that happen that impact our forms, they're updated. And when they are, we notify you, our users, to let you know that there is a change and when it will go live. So even if you're integrating with your PMS provider, you don't have to do anything, but that is just a way of us, sending that broadcast email to let you know that there's a change and when it will go live. Yes.
Yeah, I figured out what the issue was with chat. I think everything that we did has fixed it. So if there's anybody wanting to put in a question for Quay or anything, you should be able to do that now. And then also just wanted to mention for our other folks that are going to present, if you could once again raise your hand to request to speak, and I'll bring you guys in when the time is right. But Quay, I did have another question last month, and sorry to kind of throw you off on this because I didn't prep you for it, but last month we did a segment on gender inclusion and the roommate matching process, and within that we learned that there were a total of 7 states that are now considering gender identity a protected class, especially during this process. From a legal compliance standpoint, does that does that cover us in those states as well, as far as you know?
Yeah. So, and maybe I should have also been clear earlier. I'm definitely not an attorney. We do have our legal department that works in the forms, but I do believe that is something that they are reviewing right now, and to ensure that if it is a legal, if it's required legally, they would update those forms. But they are reviewing that. I don't have a complete answer on it right now, but that's something obviously we have seen come up a lot, and we want to ensure that for those properties, those operators that do have these scenarios, and they want to have documents and forms in place. So when you are setting up your lease generations, that it accommodates that. So it's something that we're certainly working on.
Gotcha.
Okay. Any other questions?
I don't see any in the chat just yet, but I'll let you know if they come up.
Okay, thank you. So as I mentioned, we do have the annual legal review. We also have Pacific State legal webinars. So when those changes are made, our legal counsels, they do a webinar to ensure that you are understanding the changes, and you would have access to this as an operator to be able to use this to understand what those changes are and what they mean. We're also working on a lot of compliant resources that we want to be available to our members, to our users, to ensure that you have all of the necessary documents that you need to operate. For our student housing lease recent changes, so our student housing lease, when you purchase a lease packet, you'll get access to the entire lease, our lease forms. You'll have access to a conventional lease as well as the student housing lease. And the student housing lease is similar to the conventional lease. It's only different that is leased by the bed. You can lease by the unit, or you can also lease by that specific bedroom. So it allows you, the operator, to specify the apartment, bedroom number, and type of floor plan, and defines the resident's use and access. You have the option to start the lease process before you have availability. So I understand a lot of management companies that I work with, do pre-leasing. So the notice regarding exclusive use is designed to allow you to inform your residents of their assigned space. This allows you to have a signed lease without the apartment information. So that apartment information may not be available when you're doing a pre-lease, but this exclusive use notice allows you to do that.
Gotcha.
Any questions in the chat for me?
I haven't seen any come up, but we did send out a poll, just kind of getting an idea from everybody if they're currently using the student housing lease, if they are moving over to it or considering it. 10% said yes, 20% said planning to switch, and 70% not at this time. So still a lot of student housing operators out there, Quay, that you need to talk to. I also did push out, there were 2 flyers that you sent me beforehand. I did push those out to everybody. So those are there for download. Also, when we go back and we put everything up on the website, those will be there as well.
Yeah, well, I'm, for those who are considering, for those who are not ready to make the switch yet, I am definitely more than happy to sit down, do a Pacific, call to make sure that I understand your pain points and how NAA can meet your needs. Like I mentioned at the beginning, I have used this program before when I was working on a property, and it's definitely saves you a lot of time, stress. No, you don't have to guess what form should I use. Am I up to date? You leave that word to NAA, and especially now that we've added the litigation defender insurance, that is just another way to ensure that you are, you're covered. But for Click and Lease, student housing is designed to meet your needs in terms of your student housing properties, and it doesn't automatically renew or enter a month-to-month tendency. So that is a lot of those are feedbacks that I hear from some of our operators, that they want a lease packet like that, and so it authorizes transfers, relocation, replacement of residents under any circumstances, which happens a lot at a student housing property. So definitely happy to talk to individuals, folks here that are interested for more information and kind of just getting down to what you need at your property.
All right, perfect. And Kelly Poor, I did see your chat come through. I wasn't sure if that was for Quay or for me. So if it is for Quay, I'll make sure that I connect you, you two, so that she can answer that question, or if it's something, again, I'm not sure who you're sending that to, so just let me know. All right. Well, Quay, thank you so much. And looking forward to seeing more people get on the NAA form lease. I think it's a great opportunity. I actually forgot that you guys had come out with a student housing lease a couple years ago until Jen Cassidy reminded me. So glad to see folks are making that switch. Yes. Well, guys, I'm going to go ahead and Quay, I'll eject you here in just a second from the stage, but I'm going to go ahead and bring up Charlie Matthews to go over our regional and national update. Charlie, how are you doing today?
What's going on, Wes? How are we, my friend?
Doing great.
I got good internet now. I got good internet.
Yeah. For those that don't know, I basically told Charlie if he didn't get a wired internet connection, I was coming down to Atlanta to install it for him myself. So
tech guy with bad internet. How about that, right?
Well, listen, I've got your slides up here. If I can go through them, or if you want to navigate them, either way.
Yeah, we can just jump all the way to the national updates. We can start talking regionally about how things are looking. Super cool. So as of June 13th, yesterday, this data basically is saying the first 10 days in June. Nationally, occupancy right around 90.54%, up about 5.09% year over year. And then pre-lease is at 80.77%. It's called 81%, up about 8.83% year over year. What's interesting about this, everybody keeps asking me, hey, where do you think things will end up, upon move-in sometime in August? And right now, that delta between the difference in occupancy year over year and the pre-lease numbers year over year would shake out to be somewhere around 3.5%, 4%. Nationally, I mean, you're seeing massive jumps on the West Coast and the Southwest side of the U.S. So I'm going to be the first one to kind of put the flag on the moon and say student housing is probably going to eclipse that 92.5%, 93% mark. Here's what I would expect. So don't come after me if it doesn't, but I'm pretty confident based on where the numbers are looking and trending. We should see something similar to what I just said, 92.5 to 93. But let's jump into the regions. I'm going to back up a little bit here. In the Northeast, occupancy at 90.13, pre-lease at 80.52. Occupancy up about 5% there, where it was 85.27 this time last year. And pre-lease doing exceptionally well year over year. This time last year was about 69.83. Again, a lot more urban markets, more COVID conscious in those urban areas, high density markets. So good news out of the Northeast. In the Midwest, occupancy is at roughly 90.44%, pre-lease at roughly 80.97%. Occupancy this time last year was about 4.5% behind, where it was at 86.72. Pre-lease was about, give or take, about 7.5% as well, where it was at 73.64%. And then the Southeast currently sitting at 91.23%, pre-lease at roughly 81.91%. Occupancy this time last year was about 87.46%, so about a 3.84% dip there, or positive gain there on occupancy. And then pre-lease was about 73.56%. So good news out of the Southeast. Again, that's the largest concentration of student housing beds from a regional perspective. So holds a lot of weight in these calculations. To the Southwest, current occupancy at roughly 90.78%, pre-lease at 82.79%, occupancy up about almost 5 points there. It was at 86.03% this time last year. And pre-lease had almost a little over 10%, where it was about 72.48%. So good news out of the Southwest. And then the Western region, which I know we're going to jump in here in a little while, is at 91.33%. Pre-lease is at roughly 74.71. Occupancy this time last year was about 85.09, and pre-lease was roughly 64.77. The occupancy number, of course, California schools were primarily online, so seeing positive jumps there from an occupancy standpoint and a pre-lease standpoint as they bounce back from COVID. Moving over to some select markets. Wes, if you want to hit the next slide for me, my friend. Awesome. Looking in the Northeast, Ithaca, New York, Cornell University, current occupancy at roughly 93.66%. Pre-lease at roughly 85.81%. Occupancy year over year is down about 2%, give or take, where it was at 95.90. But pre-lease is up significantly, where it was at roughly 73.47% this time last year. It's Ithaca, New York. State College, I've kept this one on here since I know there's a lot of interest in this market. Current occupancy roughly 94.09%. Pre-lease roughly 89.81%. Occupancy this time last year was a few basis points under 86% at 85.93. And the pre-lease this time last year was roughly 86.44%. So up about 3.5% there in State College, Pennsylvania. Bloomington, Indiana, current occupancy at roughly 92.11%. Current pre-lease is at 84.87%. The occupancy in the market this time last year was roughly 94.72, so down about 2.5%. And then pre-lease was actually at a roughly 93.97%, so a little behind in Bloomington, Indiana, at IU. Lincoln, Nebraska, the current occupancy 91.40%. Current pre-lease roughly 75.13%. Occupancy this time last year was 93.46, and pre-lease this time last year was roughly 78.61%. So behind a few points there in Lincoln, Nebraska, seemingly online. In Tallahassee, Florida, at Florida State, current occupancy at 92.08%. Current pre-lease at 85.80. Occupancy up it was at 86.31%. And pre-lease was roughly 84.72. So seemingly in line there in Tallahassee, Florida. Tuscaloosa, Alabama, current occupancy at roughly 81.32%, excuse me. Current pre-lease at 73.21. And then the current occupancy this time last year was roughly 70.46%. And pre-lease was roughly 66.31%. So that's Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Huntsville, Texas. Current occupancy roughly 78.35%. Current pre-lease at 67.19%. Current occupancy last year, 77.22%, and pre-lease was roughly 62.43%. So doing a little better there in Huntsville, Texas. San Antonio, current occupancy roughly 96.20. Current pre-lease at roughly 80.21%. Occupancy this time last year was roughly 84.29. And pre-lease was roughly 70.91. So good jumps there for San Antonio, Texas. Eugene, Oregon, which is the topic of conversation here in a moment. Current occupancy roughly 92.11%. Current pre-lease at 76.24. And then the occupancy this time last year, about a point, they're doing a little bit better. They're at 91.27. And pre-lease also doing a little better at 75.22%. And lastly, in the Western region, Seattle, Washington. Again, I know there's a lot of eyeballs in this market. Current occupancy at 94.61%. Current pre-lease at 68.31. Occupancy this time last year was roughly 79.09. And pre-lease this time last year was roughly 64.99%. So that wraps up our select markets across the U.S. Any questions or anything like that, feel free to shoot me a note. I'm happy to help in any way. Wes, you want to dive right into University of Oregon?
Yeah, and I've got your slide here.
Okay.
I don't know if you want to go over that, or if you want me to move over to the Q&A for our panel.
Yes. So let's run through a little bit more detailed information about in Eugene, Oregon, with the current occupancy. Of course, we just ran through pre-lease. Average rate per bed is roughly up about 8.1%. Getting into the floor plan analysis. So with CollegeHouse, as many of you know, we work with each group, and we were able to pull floor plan level occupancy and pre-lease numbers on a weekly basis. So being able to look at that, again, kind of understand the true demand, what's going on at the individual floor plan level. So looking here, studio through 5 bedrooms, occupancy currently 90.39% for the studios, And pre-lease is pretty far behind at 39.09%. That's out of roughly about 500 or so beds too. The one bedrooms occupancy roughly 93.93, pre-lease at 67.36, occupancy roughly 95.91, pre-lease at 80.41 for the two bedrooms. The occupancy for the threes is 92.85, pre-lease roughly 88.36%. The four bedrooms, the pre-leases or the occupancy is roughly 86.64. Pre-lease roughly 68.09. This is the largest, I guess, from the sample set of beds in this floor plan analysis for the four bedrooms. And then the floor plan occupancy on the five bedrooms, 84.25%, and the pre-lease at roughly 70.22%. There's two deals in lease up right now. That is Identity Eugene and a Union on Broadway. I know one of those deals is pretty heavy on the studio side, but a couple more deals in the pipeline there. 2,000, including the those in lease up, 2,427 split between four projects. No large one coming in 24, the standard Eugene. So we've got some lovely people here that we're going to talk through. Justin, I'm going to pick on you. Justin Pellegrino with Cardinal. How are things going in Eugene? What are you seeing? Do my numbers stack up?
Yeah, they do. Thanks for having me. So,
and hey, really quick, if we could just go through, go through and introduce you guys, so that our audience knows, who you guys are. I think that's probably where we need to start first. And Justin, since he handed it off to you, let's start with you.
Yeah, Justin Pellegrino, portfolio manager for Cardinal. Cardinal currently oversees 7 communities in the Eugene market, totaling 1,900 beds. So yeah. You want to skip to Jimmy now?
Yeah.
Yep. Hi, everyone. I'm Jimmy Hinson with American Campus Communities. I'm a senior regional vice president for us here, and we own and operate 3 properties in the Eugene market: 2125 Franklin, 959 Franklin, and the 515.
I'm Wendy Going with Topanga Management Company and Beck. I am the Director of Communications and Marketing.
I'm Chris Messenger. I'm the VP of Operations at Topanga Management Company, and we currently have 1 property in Eugene with 650 beds.
Perfect. And just to kind of end up on one of the finish talking about one of the polls we launched when Charlie started speaking, ask the question: if you are a site manager, how is pre-leasing at your property? 16% said already hit 100%. So congratulations to you guys. Love seeing the posts that you're making on LinkedIn and Facebook about that with your teams. Love the gold balloons that I see every time I open up LinkedIn, it seems like. And then 83% said that they were trending ahead of last year, and 0% are not trending behind last year. So I know that's not the case with all the site managers across the country, but at least the ones attending here, looks like everybody's ahead or have already finished things up.
Is there a correlation, Wes? We will never know.
Yeah. So I'm going to let me end that poll. I'm going to start another poll actually here for Eugene. Would like to find out how many folks attending today are actually have something in the Eugene market. Then while I'm doing that, I'll go ahead and get slide presentation going here and start rolling through some of these questions for our guest. First I want to start with enrollment. Between fall 2019, fall 2020, enrollment at University of Oregon, undergraduate enrollment specifically, dropped 4.5%, losing almost 900 students. Fall 2021 saw an increase of 3% with undergraduates, but a big part of that increase was part-time undergrads, which I found it didn't seem like, if they were part-time, it didn't seem like they were actually living at home. It seemed like most of them were in Eugene based on some of the numbers in the off-campus market. And the stabilized properties in this market are leasing up much faster than last year. We'll start talking about the 2 new devs that are going through lease up because they're significantly behind. But the first question I've got for the panel, are you hearing anything from the university about enrollment projections for this coming fall? And if not, what's kind of the general sense from your site teams and what they're hearing on the ground in Eugene?
I actually spoke with somebody in admissions yesterday at the university, and they're pretty tight-lipped about any type of enrollment for this year, but they did indicate that it is going to be very similar to 2021. So the thing that I want to point out, though, is that the school accepted for 2021, they accepted 84% of applications, which is 2% higher than what they did in 2019. But the average grade point average of those students is a 3.7, which is going in the direction that University of Oregon wants to be as a premier school over here on the West Coast.
Gotcha. Jimmy, anything from your site teams or what you're hearing from the university?
Yeah, we're hearing a lot of the same things on enrollment. We anticipate it'll be pretty consistent for this coming fall. Yeah, I mean, we had a contact mention that they're going to continue to try to grow graduate over the next 5 years, pushing to get as high as maybe a 10% increase on where they are currently. But we think it'll be pretty consistent. And I think that, a lot of the velocity that we saw this year is just a lot of that kind of consumer student confidence in coming back to local student housing, as we move out of the, COVID environment and kind of back to pre-COVID conditions with in-person classes and all of that good stuff.
Great. And Jimmy, I can't remember if it was you or Justin that mentioned it in one of our previous calls last week, but they're looking to actually take some beds offline. If I remember correctly.
So if you go to University of Oregon's website, they've got a page on their Hamilton Walton transformation project. And so it's a 3-phase project where last summer they completed phase 1, and that was developing a new residence hall that was 700 beds that opened on prior green space. And so they're in the middle of phase 2, and that's with Walton Hall. And they're going, the plan is to take Walton Hall offline, which as we understand it currently is from a pre-lease standpoint, and that's 575 beds. Okay. The plan is to replace that hall with 2 new buildings that will total 1,100 beds. So there'll be a net add to the on-campus beds starting in fall of 23. But they do plan in kind of their 3rd phase to take Hamilton Hall offline, and that is 773 beds. So we anticipate by, next summer, we think there'll be a net 327 additional beds on campus. So, not too much, not too many that will, kind of throw off the market and affect things, but that's kind of, what we're seeing and what they've got posted on their website.
Gotcha. Justin, how about your teams? I know you're not the only portfolio manager overseeing Eugene, but I know you and Amy both talk quite a bit. What between the two of your teams there, what are you guys hearing about?
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of effort made by the university to grow enrollment all the way through 2025. One of the metrics that we're looking at is, they have a 6% increase with admissions compared to last year going into this coming year. So that should equate to, enrollment growth for this coming year. The university's target is around 28,000 from when we last spoke to them. Enrollment growth come 2025. And so that's as far as the projections go when it comes with the communication from the university.
Gotcha.
There's a small piece, sorry to jump in. There's a small piece that we're seeing at Ducks Village. And I think it has a lot to do with athletics at the community college level. So we this year have seen, our Lane Community College students coming in pretty strong at Ducks Village.
Oh, interesting.
So it has a lot to do with the athletics, red shirting and gray shirting, and them not being able to make the university's team. So they're going to community college to play.
Gotcha. Let me kind of messed up my slides here. Let me switch you guys back so everybody can see what we're looking at here. So I want to talk about, I mentioned that stabilized assets are leasing up way quicker than the deliveries this year. There's 2 properties there, almost 1,300 beds between the 2 of them that are being delivered this fall. Identity Eugene that CA Ventures is delivering, Union on Broadway, which Greystar's managing. Charlie, do you remember if does Greystar own that, or is there a different owner? I'm not sure.
Not off the top of my head.
Gotcha. So, when we look at, if you take everything out of CollegeHouse that's stabilized, that average pre-lease, and this was as of a week ago, was 81% pre-lease. And then you've got these 2 properties at 48 and almost 35%. I'm sure they're a little bit more ahead this week. Is this kind of typical in Eugene for the for the new lease ups to be lagging behind the stabilized properties at this time of the year? I'm sure obviously earlier in the year that's probably always the case, but at this time of the year, is that surprising to you guys at all?
For me, it's not. I think that we're not dealing with naive students. They see what's going on in the world right now and have some fear about, is this project actually going to be finished? So I don't think that any new build right now, we're not in the world of it being stabilized until at least the second year, going in, with a possibility of like 50-60% occupancy in your first year.
Gotcha.
Yeah, piggyback off of what Wendy said. We saw the same thing happen when 13th and Olive was built. It took a couple years to kind of build that reputation and that trust with the community to really start running with the market, market's velocity. So we would expect to see these 2 communities be a lot closer for next year's lease up with the market.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Gotcha. So let's talk about rates for a second, because you guys have had a significant rent increase. I mean, anywhere from some of the properties had a little bit of a negative. I think there was some type of true up that may have been happening there, but as much as 25.75% of an increase at one of the properties. Year over year, that's, from an average standpoint, it was 7.37. I'm just wondering, at the beginning of the leasing season, when you guys kind of set out to, put your leasing tiers together and all of that, were you expecting these type of increases, or is that kind of caught you guys off guard a little bit?
We didn't really know what to expect. I think, again, kind of, coming out of the COVID environment and seeing what we saw, especially up in the Pacific Northwest, we weren't sure, how the sentiment would be in terms of, reacting to that and velocity. And so we were, I think we were moderately aggressive and, turned out to be pleasantly surprised. We averaged, I think, on a weighted basis, anywhere from about a 3.25% to about a 4.5% increase in, rate per occupied bed for our properties. So we were happy with that. We leased up relatively quickly. And so, may not have been able to react as fast as we would have liked to, but I think we feel good about that and, feel strong about our opportunity to be aggressive next year.
Yeah, for the Cardinal communities, we've surpassed all of our initial expectations when we first went out and set rates for this year. Some of them more than others, just due to strategy and different clients and owners with the different communities, but a pleasant surprise nonetheless.
Yeah, Wendy, I think you guys have close to about 10 or 11% increase this year.
Yeah, we came out strong right away. And we are trailing a little bit behind the market in our pre-lease, but we anticipated that because of how strong we came out the gates with our pricing. We included parking this year, and we hadn't done that in the past. So we came out strong, stuck with it, and we had no incentives, including for our retention. So we're positioned pretty well, going into next year too.
Yeah. Now, did you say you included parking in the rent, or you started charging for?
Oh, I'm sorry. We started charging for parking.
Gotcha.
So we had
10% increase plus charging. What are you guys getting for parking rates?
Well, we just did a flat fee, one-time fee, $100 for our start-in, just to get our communities used to it, and then we're going to add it to a monthly charge upcoming to get our rates up. And like Wendy said, we started out a little slow on the velocity side, but we've really seen an increase in velocity here in the last couple of weeks, where we're really starting to catch last year's numbers. So
yeah. You guys are only behind like 2%. If you've been able to capture those kind of rates and additional revenue, that's fantastic. Well, hey, let's talk a little bit about the pipeline. And I thought there was only one property, but Charlie mentioned another one to us last week on our pre-call. We'll get to that one in a second. But Landmark is going to be delivering the standard at Eugene. 703 beds, studio to 5-bedroom units. Anything you guys have heard about? I think they're supposed to be starting, or they started construction earlier this year, but anything that you guys are hearing about the pipeline with that particular property?
No, not really. A good location, and I think they'll do well. But yeah, that's about it so far.
Yeah, similar to Jimmy, like this, where they're planning on building this or breaking ground, is they're going to be one of the closest communities to campus once completed.
Gotcha. And the other one in this market is we didn't have a name on it. Charlie, maybe you've got it. I looked up the Outer Ducks LLC, but wasn't sure.
I don't think
they've actually got a name for it yet.
Yeah, I don't think there's been a name or anything. So they're tearing. I think it's the old Glenwood restaurant. It's one at the corner right there. And a couple of neighboring buildings will probably be teared down for the site. But I think they got through planning or tried to raise the height requirement for a 12-story building for C2 commercial zones. So says total 200 units is what the site's for. How that shakes out from a bed standpoint, you're probably looking at somewhere between, I'd say, probably 350, 400 beds. I think that the article that I read was supposed to be pretty heavy on studios 1s and 2s. So, I think one thing, Wes, that's kind of beneficial for the market, specific on the stabilized side, right? Like having these new devs come into the market and kind of add a new sticker shock to the price. It allows, for the price point of the market specifically, it allows those that are stabilized in there to kind of ride the wave. So I think, as you're looking at any sort of pipeline with, if Justin's numbers hold true on the enrollment growth, enough students go around, but just the ability to, charge a higher base rent, add that additional revenue, and just ride kind of the trend with the new devs in the market, and kind of keep shaking things out over the next couple of years. But with beds coming offline and coming online, a lot of question marks, as Wendy mentioned, around delivery, if they're going to happen. I mean, you're in the market. I think you're very excited that you are. Yeah, it's my kind of opinion on new devs coming in. They can be your best friend. They can be your worst friend. But I think in this case, they're helping.
Well, guys, thanks so much. That's going to conclude our deep dive into Eugene. It's also going to conclude our shop talk for today. Jimmy, Wendy, Chris, Justin, thanks so much for participating on this deep dive, and really appreciate all that your companies are doing to support Shop Talk as well. And thanks so much for that. Do want to end with our poll we had as far as the audience members who had a property in Eugene. 16% yes, 66% no, and 16% are planning to. So see who's buying something in Eugene this summer, this fall.
Interesting.
Well, guys, thanks so much. Again, if you don't know anything about Student Housing Insight, please go check us out at studenthousinginsight.com. You can get some more information about our podcast and the things that we're doing over there, as well as a new app that we just recently launched called SHI Connect. You can find it in your App Store or Google Play. But that's a place for us to kind of continue the discussion from here. So if it's something from an operational standpoint, marketing and leasing standpoint, DEI, all those things we're covering over there. So make sure that that you're downloading that and becoming a member of that today. Well, guys, thanks so much, and we'll talk to you in July.
Take care. Thank you.
Thank you.